Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Ozark Radio Hour, brought to you by the Eureka Springs Independent, the Inside Straight and Thanatops Club. I'm Richard Pillay.
And I'm Kent Crow, and we're your hosts for about an hour of purely organic radio. Not always perfect, but always fresh, always local, and always honest. And joining us today are Jeremiah Alvarado of the Eureka Springs Independent, the new head honcho of this show, and Dan Croats, the old, and may I emphasize very old, going out of business head honcho. How are you guys today?
Well, apparently I'm quite old and decrepit, but otherwise I'm well, thank you.
Well, you're welcome. How about you, Jeremiah?
I'm doing very well and being very young.
Okay. Well, and also on the show today are who is on the show, Richard?
Well, as you know, or may not know, Kent, last Thursday night was the start of the 2016 NFL football season, which will make many people very happy and many women into football widows. And Suzy Q is on the program today to offer some very good tips on how to survive the football season-related widow.
Well, you know, I suppose that's excellent, and I've got to tell you, Suzy Q does a great job in explaining how she morphed into a football fan to accommodate her old and decrepit husband, Dan Croats.
Are you a football fan, Ken?
I am not. I maybe watch one or two games a year, usually the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You know, I let them weed it all out, weed out the losers, you know, and get down to what probably really matters, which is, you know, who's going to get paid the really big bucks to play.
Yeah. Jeremiah, are you a sports football guy?
I only listen to the Arkansas Razorbacks. That's about it.
I tried very, very hard to become an Arkansas Razorback fan.
Couldn't do it, could you?
Well, you know, I grew up rooting for the Gophers, the Minnesota Gophers, but they've never won anything. It's been, probably since 1962 that the Minnesota Gophers went to the Rose Bowl, and otherwise they've been losing. But let me say that Minnesota is at a distinct disadvantage from the Arkansas Razorbacks, because Minnesota Gopher players have to be able to read and write in order to qualify for eligibility on their team. And I know that's not the case.
True.
I think there's some leagues now where you have to be a felon in order to walk on.
Well, I know the Arkansas Razorbacks don't hire assistant coaches; they hire probation officers. Is that correct? So, am I making fans here?
Well, you should. Well, yeah. Okay.
Perhaps we should move on.
Well, I want to make a confession since you brought the Razorbacks into this. Okay.
Uh-oh.
As a graduate of the University of Arkansas, I believe that I am a demographic consisting of less than 1% of the entire student body that has ever graduated from the University of Arkansas who has never been to a University of Arkansas basketball or football game.
Oh my God!
Never went. Didn't care.
No wonder they threw you out of office.
I know. I'm a heathen.
Where I went to school, you could sell your student ticket at that time, and if you could get a male and female student ticket next to each other, you could sell your season tickets for enough to buy your books for that year. And so as a result, I never went to college.
But you went to Nebraska,
I did go to Nebraska.
I remember giving a speech up there to a group, and it was kind of an icebreaker. I started out by saying, well, you know what the N stands for in Nebraska? And they all looked at me, and I said, knowledge. Nobody got it. And I said, and thinking that I was really failing, I said, well, you know what the O stands for in Oklahoma? And they all looked at me, and I said, honesty. And boy, they just cracked up. They loved that. They got that one.
Well, yeah, we could go back to Richard's days at the University of Nebraska as the Hercules of love, and probably learn a great deal about what it takes to sell football tickets.
You bet.
But
well, you guys, we were talking about the National Football League, and you immediately went back to your old alma maters. Can you explain to me how it is the NFL is a non-profit organization, and how we have to get municipal bonds to build stadiums for them, and then they get paid billions of dollars?
All right, listen very carefully to what I say, Richard. And in the words of one of our famous former presidents, read my lips. Money and power. Okay.
Well, we can move on then.
All right. So, who else is on the show?
Sharon Laborde talks about two Arkansas writers, one pretty famous, John Grisham, and one not famous but much loved around these parts, Donald Harington, on Welcome to the Conversation. Dan, you knew Dan Harington, didn't you?
Don Harington?
Harington, yes.
Yeah, I knew Mr. Harington a little bit. He came to my wife's bookstore a couple of times to sign books, and he and his wife were got to be fairly frequent dinner guests at our house.
I can understand.
Yeah.
Dinner at your house is fantastic.
Well, thank you. But anyways, Don Harington was an art historian who grew up here in Arkansas and spent the summers down in Newton County, up near Swain and Parthenon and some of those little tiny old hill towns that aren't quite even operating anymore.
Was he growing pot?
I can't speak to that. But anyways.
How did you know about growing pot?
Newton County's never mind.
Okay.
I've only read about it.
Yeah. I can remember when money grew on trees.
That's correct. So, anyway, Sharon does a good job of sharing why everybody in Arkansas ought to know who Don Harington is and why we should all read his books.
Well, I need to do that. T.Racy Johnson is also with us again today, and she has another episode of Music is Medicine for the Soul. This week, T.Racy is featuring Stevie Tombstone, 6 Mile Station, and the Camptown Ladies.
Well, that sounds pretty good. And Jeremiah, since you're in charge now, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, since we'll be kicking off a series of programs this fall about activists and activism, both here in the Ozarks and elsewhere on topics such as environmentalism and economic development, I thought we'd take a look at the Standing Rock Pipeline controversy going on just now a little later in the program.
That sounds pretty good. As you might suspect, I do have a few opinions I'd like to share about pipelines and other intrusions on the sacred lands of the indigenous people of this country.
Why didn't you just say my people?
My people.
All right.
You are so difficult to be in the same room with. Is there anything else going on today?
Well, as you know, this week is the 15th anniversary of 9/11 and the attacks on the Twin Towers in New York City, and consequently the Writers' Colony at Derry Hollow has asked us to join them in remembering the day. Linda Caldwell, the ex-director at the Writers' Colony, writes this. As our nation marks the 15th anniversary of 9/11, the Writers' Colony at Derry Hollow invites our community to commemorate with a day of compassion. In honor of the victims of the 9/11 events, we ask you to recall that extraordinary time. In the days after 9/11, we stood at the juncture of many possible futures. At first, there was only shock, grief, and fear, but that quickly morphed into a tremendous, heartfelt desire to band together and help each other. People wanted to be called on to do more for country and community. There was a sense of unity in towns all across the nation. 15 years later, we again stand at the juncture of many possible futures. It appears we're choosing a path of polarization and divisiveness. Let the anniversary of 9/11 be our summons to a compassionate action in Eureka Springs. Sunday, September 11th, we encourage you to reach out and help someone in need, mend a broken friendship, perform random acts of kindness, and speak kindly to everyone. Let us be reminded that we can intentionally live in harmony with mutual respect and with compassion for each other. Choose to be compassionate in action this September 11th. Follow this special day. The Writers' Colony at Derry Hollow invites you to submit stories to our Facebook page. Share your compassion project and let us know how it affected those you helped and if it impacted your life in a positive way. If you have some special memories of 9/11, share them on the Writers Colony Facebook page. Do you guys have any 9/11 memories?
I was working doing trade show work at the CNN Convention Center in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. They were worried that it would be a target and locked the building. Who was in was locked in, who was out was locked out for a couple of days. We did get to see the raw feeds. They had banks and walls of television screens up there, and I got to see the only private aircraft in the air was escorted out of the United States with bin Laden's family on it by George Bush's. They were on a Bush Oil Company plane, and that was my memory.
Well, 9/11 was such a tragedy, and the events of that day and the things that people witnessed as the towers burned before they came down was just absolutely emotionally numbing. It was just almost more than I could comprehend.
It was, and it was a time, a great opportunity, that tragedy, to bring us together as a country and as a people, and it was co-opted by evil politicians and turned into even more horror. I was very disappointed with our response to that as a country.
What I would really be interested in is asking Jeremiah. Jeremiah, obviously, at the time this happened, you were really too young to comprehend what was going on. But your generation has also been left with the legacy of 9/11, and everything that has happened since then has, I think, impacted politics and economics in this country, as well as a startling page of history. How do the people of your generation, the sort of 20-somethings right now, view or think of the events of 9/11, or do you?
Perhaps more of the after effects, I suppose, what Richard was talking about. At least I don't view the response as very positive, I guess would be the best way to put it, that our government had towards it. I'm too young to remember it. I don't remember that day, to be honest. So
it's kind of like me trying to remember Pearl Harbor. I will admit I am a little bit I'm not as attached as you guys are to the events. Well,
but I don't see the response as being very positive, as being very.
Yeah. If we draw an analogy, there were basically as many people killed in the World Trade Centers as were killed at Pearl Harbor that started World War II. And the subsequent events, while not nearly as broad in scope or as tragic in the loss of life, have still affected world history in ways that were unimaginable, I think, before 9/11. And so, your generation has inherited that legacy. And I think, like it or not, your generation is going to be dealing with both the economic impacts for our country of those events, as well as the social and political impacts as well. And I think that it's going to be incumbent upon your generation to really have a good understanding of what that did to us and how it drove us to the position that we now see being played out on the world stage, and especially in the Middle East. It ain't over. It ain't over, folks.
Well, I recall the events fairly clearly, and what I recall is that people did, for at least a while, come together. I mean, there was some national mourning. There was a national shared experience of grief. The main issue, I'm afraid, is that we chose to look at the attack on the Twin Tower as an act of war, when in fact it was a criminal enterprise. It was a police problem, in other words. And if we had addressed it from a criminal justice standpoint rather than from a military standpoint, that would have changed lots and lots of things. We wouldn't be in the Mideast, for example. ISIS would not be an army of an army. We dignify ISIS by calling it an army. The fact of the matter is, it's just a criminal conspiracy, and we ought to treat them as criminals and not as soldiers. And
Dan, you raised some really interesting issues issues and some interesting points there. And let me address a couple of them. First of all, I'm not certain that there was any mechanism in the criminal justice system that could have addressed the problem of the 15 or so individuals who flew the planes into the towers and other, the Pentagon and the fields up in Pennsylvania. There was no one to prosecute. When it comes to anyone who was behind it, including Osama bin Laden, they were outside the jurisdiction of the United States. So being able to prosecute them criminally would have been, at best, a precarious undertaking, if not impossible. The other thing I think...
may I ask, though, then, was the appropriate response then was to...
invade Iraq?
Invade Afghanistan?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I agree that was in error, but I'm not certain that we can say that there was a criminal justice solution to that particular issue. I think it ultimately was needed a political solution, but not necessarily a military solution.
Well, you may recall it as a reader of history, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in Chicago, where...
Hey, look, Al Capone was in Florida. He had nothing to do with that.
Yeah, but the response was a criminal one, and it was that St. Valentine's Day Massacre that really brought the federal government into the Chicago police network, and then they began to investigate the network of criminals, and ultimately Big Al went to jail for tax evasion.
But they were all U.S. citizens in this country.
So you're saying there's no viable international law system?
No, I'm saying that Dan's analogy sucks.
But earlier you did.
This is fuzzy logic, folks.
No international policing.
Yeah, well,
that would have applied to this.
And let me say another thing, and I think that something that we often overlook is that our role in the world and the way we are perceived by people of other cultures is not as the shining beacon of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We are perceived by a wide number of cultures throughout the world, and probably especially in the Middle East, as the evil empire. And when they see themselves fighting back against us, they see themselves as Han Solo and Luke Skywalker, trying to undo all of the evil things that America has perpetuated. And when I say America has perpetuated, I'm talking about big oil, the international corporations, and other aspects of our society.
We can debate this, for days.
No, we're not.
But
I'm done.
Our response to the tragic events of 9/11 was certainly absolutely wrong in almost every single way. It was co-opted again by big oil, and we went over and decimated a country. We invaded a country that had nothing to do with this. They didn't even have Al-Qaeda over there. A despot, yes, but anyway.
Well, let me say one more thing. The commemoration of 9/11, to me, isn't about reflection on our political or military exploits or mistakes. The commemoration of 9/11 is an event and a time for us to reflect and honor and think about those 3,000 people who lost their lives as a result of a senseless act of violence. And it really is an opportunity for us to reflect on who we are as a culture and to reflect and remember all of the families and all of the people that were affected by what occurred on that morning.
I think that's very, very, very nice and correct in how we should look at it. Okay, if you out there have some special memories of 9/11, be sure and share them on the Writers Colony's Facebook page. 9/11 was an important day in our history, and we should all commemorate it. We should listen to a few tips on how to cope with football, too. So here's Suzy Q.
folks. This is Suzy Q, and you're listening to The Roots and Reach of Music. I spend hours researching the roots of the rock and roll music I grew up with and love today. Though I didn't grow up loving it, I now love watching NFL football too. I love some of the rock and roll songs about baseball. I rock out to Don Henley's The Boys of Summer and John Fogerty's Centerfield. Bruce Springsteen made a brief reference to the sport in Glory Days, singing about a guy I knew who was a big baseball player back in high school, but I began to wonder about rock and roll songs about football. Then I began to ponder. I wasn't raised up with it, so how did I come to love football? I love a man who loves football, but I wondered, is that enough? It's easy to love a good man. My man is kind and generous. He's loving, loyal, and even cooks, cleans, and says yes to almost everything I ask, say, or do. So how does a woman who loves this good man, wants to spend time with the man, reconcile that at least every Sunday in the fall he parks in his chair to watch football, a sport about which you know or care nothing? That was my quandary nearly 3 decades ago. For many who know me, I now am a huge NFL fan, often forcing my poor husband to watch as many as 3 games on any given Sunday afternoon. I know many women, some in their dotage, with doting husbands like mine, but also other young women, perhaps just entering into relationships with these good men who are wondering what to do, how to deal with this whole football thing. How did I get to where I am today with football? How did it become an NFL season-long beloved tradition, culminating in our own private Super Bowl party and the subsequent grieving that accompanies the end of the season? Football, like many other aspects of the whole relationship thing, takes some effort and compromise, and it takes a little time. Reflecting back on my own football journey, I realized I'd learned a thing or two that might be helpful to other women who want positive outcomes to this whole football thing. Step 1, be happy or at least act as if. I used to flounce around the house muttering under my breath and ensure that my laboring under chores that needed to be done were highly visible to my reclining husband. Heavy sighs and a countenance that shouted, "Aggrieved woman," were part of the ritual. One Sunday, I decided that the wrinkles from frowning and the actual negative chilling effects those efforts had on at least Monday were not worth it. I also learned that tit for tat, such as, "Well, I let you watch football, so I get new shoes," really wasn't very satisfying. It certainly did not portray me as the mature one. I made a decision. I went about my business, vowing to be glad that my man was enjoying himself. After all, isn't that what we want for those we love? Step 2 is to just be present. When you've mastered step 1, try moving into the room of the football. Mastery of step 1 includes not snorting, huffing, or eye-rolling about what is happening on the field. When you can be present without making fun of a bunch of men in tights who are chest-thumping, head-butting, and generally acting like 12-year-olds, then and only then should you attempt step 2. I first began being present by taking my chores into the room with me. I found it just as easy to fold laundry while sitting near my man as it is to fold them while alone in another room. It was also fun to watch the crowds in the stands and marvel at their insane behaviors, costumes, and general loyalty to their teams. Step 2 can also be undertaken with a solitary hobby: reading, knitting, texting, using social media, or answering emails. The point of step 2 is to spend time with your man, doing something you like while being happy that he is happy. Step 3 is to be willing to learn. I remember the first time I heard the Rolling Stones sing "Under My Thumb." While I am a huge Stones fan, I didn't care much for the song. Why? Because I didn't understand the lyrics. I couldn't yet sing along. Once I learned the words and can sing along at the top of my lungs, it became one of my all-time favorites. The same is true with football. Until one gains a basic understanding of the game, it can seem chaotic and difficult to watch. It appears as if the players are just randomly running around hoping someone on one team or the other will do something. And until I began to learn the game, I wasn't even sure what that something was. Watch, listen, and learn. I won't attempt here to describe the game. It is, after all, pretty complicated with a seemingly overloaded rule book regarding who can do what to whom and when, as well as what constitutes a penalty. This is just to say, take the time to learn about the teams and the game. When I began to understand even a bit what was happening on the field, I began to enjoy the game and game time. And when you dig beneath the surface of the players' lives, you can also discover some pretty juicy stuff. Each week also brings some new controversy to be cussed and discussed, and my husband really seems to enjoy explaining the game to me. So as time went by and my knowledge of the game grew, we have enjoyed discussing the plays, the teams, and the halftime reports. So once you learn the words, it's fun to sing the song. Step 4 is to make it fun. It's a twist on an old adage, and one that many may find sexist these days, but the way to a man's heart is through football and food. Make game day a party. If a crowd and company work for you, invite in friends. Get a little loud. Don't sweat a little mess. I began to anticipate game day and would plan a theme. Sometimes the theme was related to the teams who were playing. More often than not, though, I would plan a theme around a menu. I began to anticipate game day and would plan a theme. Sometimes the theme was related to the teams who were playing. More often than not, though, I would plan a theme menu. Mexican food makes great football food. Just a few ingredients can easily be combined to create a great football buffet. Chips, salsa, tacos, and quesadillas. All finger foods, easy to eat from your lap. It doesn't have to be complicated or exotic. It can even be takeout. Just find some excitement in your planning and preparation. Our fun also comes from our fondness for certain teams. My husband is a fan of the old teams in the National Football Conference and will generally root for them. I select my teams on whether or not I like the quarterback. Over the years, I've made these decisions for a variety of reasons. I have felt sorry for them. I have liked their dark, brooding eyes, or I find their passing style to be elegant. These differences in our team support have set up some pretty friendly yet fun rivalries. Have fun. It's a game. Step 5 is to make it special and establish traditions. My turquoise velour football pants, which a neighbor told me look like something from the Jennifer Lopez collection, yikes, are always on display on game day. While the food for the Sunday noon game could be anything quick and easy or even leftover, Sunday nights are reserved for home-baked pizza. These traditions just happened, but they give us something to talk about, laugh about, and happily anticipate. Your traditions will evolve. You'll begin to look forward to and enjoy game day. If you never develop a strong knowledge of or love of the game, you can come to love the experience. You are spending time with the man you love, and he will love you for it. When you've mastered these 5 steps, who knows, you may be ready to move on to understanding and following the NFL draft. I hope there's some guys or gals who can follow these steps and come to have as much fun as I do. But back to that original question. Are there rock and roll songs about football? Well, I found many poems about football and several country western songs such as Kenny Chesney's The Boys of Fall, Blaine Larson's In My High School, and who doesn't love Hank Williams Jr.? Are you ready for some football? But I found one. Only one football song truly identified as the rock and roll genre. The hardcore band 10 Yard Fight singing First and 10. Listeners, if you know of a good rock and roll song about football, send it to me here at the Ozark Radio Hour. In the meantime, listen to a little Hank Williams, eat some good food, love a good man or woman, and watch some football. This is Suzy Q and the Roots and Reach of Music. Thanks for listening today. Till next time, bye-bye.
Well, thank you, Suzy. It's always so much fun to listen to Suzy give us some insights into life with Dan Croats. And next up is Sharon Laborde, and welcome to the conversation. And she has some great insights into some great Arkansas writers.
Welcome to the conversation. This is Sharon Laborde. It's been a while since I've journeyed into the realm of writing and writers, but I discovered something this week that got me to thinking about how little I know about my adopted home in Arkansas and the famous writers whose roots are deep in our state. Today I want to talk about two, one wildly successful and known internationally, and another who is perhaps only known to a select group, mostly from Arkansas. I must admit I was surprised that John Grisham is a native of the state. Somehow I always associate him with Mississippi. I suppose because I attended the university at Oxford, and the two famous sons, Faulkner and Grisham, are indelibly linked in my mind to that charming town, one of my favorite places in the Deep South. Of course, there's no debate about Faulkner being born and bred in Mississippi, and I suppose since many of Grisham's settings ring true to the people and locale of the state, I've always assumed he is a native son. Well, I've lately discovered my error. John Grisham was born in 1955. He is a lawyer and best-selling author, but he is from Arkansas rather than our neighboring state of Mississippi. His first book, and my all-time favorite, A Time to Kill, along with The Rainmaker, The Firm, The Pelican Brief, The Client, and The Chamber, have been successfully made into movies. Grisham was born in Jonesboro and lived in various towns throughout northeast Arkansas growing up. His book, A Painted House, is set in Arkansas. I should have picked up on his knowledge of the state as I read it. After all, the family of migrant workers and the chief antagonist are from Eureka Springs, and his setting in the Arkansas Delta rings true. But somehow for all these years, I was certain John Grisham was born and raised in or around Oxford, or at least in Mississippi. Not that it really matters, of course. There are currently over 225 million of his books in print worldwide, translated into 29 languages. A native son of Arkansas and one to be proud of. He has provided me and thousands of others who have a fascination with the law and love a good story with hours of entertainment. Still, we don't brag about him, to my knowledge, and this leads to something to consider. I think Arkansas gets overlooked as a cultural center by the rest of America, and the world for that matter. I wonder if our location in the mid part of the country is one reason, or is it simply the general consensus of major cultural meccas that Arkansas is primarily made up of a hillbilly culture and viewed as off the beaten path, backwoods? I'm not sure I know the answer to that question, but as we switch over to our new program format in the next few weeks, I hope to be able to have some more time and the opportunity to introduce more of our local authors, both famous and obscure, to you, our listeners, along with other fascinating highlights of the creative life in the Ozarks. But speaking of the obscure, if you're from Arkansas, you've probably heard of Donald Harington. But if you're from out of state, the name may not be familiar to you. Entertainment Weekly called him America's greatest unknown writer. He was born in Little Rock in 1935 and wrote primarily about the Arkansas Ozark Mountains. It's been said that he based his fictional town of Staymore on Drake's Creek, Arkansas, where he spent many childhood summers. His background was art and art history, and he taught in New York, New England, and South Dakota before returning to his alma mater, the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville. He taught at the U of A for 22 years before retiring in 2008 and departing this life in 2009. The novelist and critic Fred Chappell said, "Donald Harington isn't an unknown writer, he's an undiscovered continent." Novelist James Salas writes in the Boston Globe, Harington's books are a piece, the quirkiest, most original body of work in contemporary U.S. letters. Butterfly Weed, one of my favorite in the Stay More series, was reviewed by Publishers Weekly, and I quote and paraphrase a short excerpt. The Ozark Hamlet's physician is Doc Swain. How Doc became a doctor, learning the deepest secrets of healing from one of the locals. But Doc has learned his lessons so well and is so successful in his chosen profession that he discovers he is able to treat patients through their dreams. While the novelty of this treatment wins him many customers, the dream cures don't earn him much money. Doc is forced to teach high school hygiene class, where he falls in love with a student and through witchcraft is turned briefly into the sex slave of the music teacher. But he is a hardy sort, not unlike the butterfly weed of the title, a root able to survive the worst either caterpillars or weather can dish out. Harington's rich and original language gives his characters depth and charm, as well as puts a new spin on commonplace notions. Bones is all we got to protect us from getting squoze and scrunched by the cruel, mean world, remarks Doc's young love and health class. Naughty, tender, and unpredictable, butterfly weed is a lively trip along a river of language. And I have to agree, that river of language and its authenticity is what draws the reader into the world of Donald Harington. I'm thankful he left such a large body of work to enchant those who recognize him as America's greatest unknown writer. His books are available in print and ebook from Amazon, and if you love used book stores and thrift shops, you might luck into an early print copy, maybe even a first edition. It would be well worth your while to add his work to your collection. If you're like me, you can't have too many books. In the weeks to come, I'll be discussing more about the talented writers, artists, and unknown gifted people here in the beautiful Ozark Mountains of Arkansas and southwest Missouri. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I hope you will join me again on Welcome to the Conversation. Also, if you have suggestions or comments about the program, I would love hearing from you. Until next time, this is Sharon Laborde, Cultural Editor of the Ozark Radio Hour. And now, please stay tuned for the following brief announcement.
Are you an independent author looking for a publisher? Cahaba Press is open to a limited number of submissions. Check out our Guidelines and Writer's Service package on our website for print and ebooks. Cahaba Press offers editing, formatting, and cover design at a reasonable rate. Your book will be digitized for upload to Amazon, and you will retain all rights to your intellectual property. That means you keep all your royalties. Your book will also be listed on our website, cahabapress.com. That's CAHABAPRESS.com, with a link to Amazon and their worldwide marketing platform. We take care of our writers. Email publisher@CahabaPress for more details. We look forward to serving you.
Many thanks, Sharon. You know, I hope she talks about Charles Portis on a future show. He was an Arkansas writer who wrote True Grit. You remember True Grit?
I love that. I love the book, and I love the John Wayne movie when he starred as Rooster Cogburn, and then Jeff Bridges did a really fine job on the remake a couple of years ago.
A couple of friends of mine, Steve Matt and his wife Kelly from Berryville, just took a vacation, went back out to Colorado and the West, and made a point of finding the meadow where John Wayne confronted his adversaries and rode across the meadow with his reins in his teeth and a pistol in one hand and a rifle. They found that meadow.
And that's exciting. I'd like to see that myself.
Yeah.
Okay. A lot more fun.
Okay.
Jeremiah, you're up now. You want to talk about the Dakota Access Oil Pipeline deal that's in the news?
Definitely. But before, I just want to talk about activism in general. Kent, how would you define activism and activist?
Well, I think probably the simplest definition of an activist is someone who feels extremely passionate about a particular issue and is willing to take some action to affect a change with regard to that particular action or issue. Activism is just a part of our culture. We were born as a nation by activists who were dissatisfied, actually economically, with the taxation system imposed upon us by the British Empire. And so our history and our roots lie in activism. And activism now takes form in many, many ways, and especially at the local level. I think any real issue, any real activism starts at the local level. And we've seen it here. We've seen it with the issues of SWEPCO, the power lines, and the power company that tried to construct a high voltage power line across our county, and local activists came to the forefront, made it an issue, and they stopped it. And I think that's what we're seeing going on right now with the Dakota Access Oil Pipeline.
Well, how do activists actually get something stopped? It's rare. Power line they tried to stop one going through Minnesota. Was that in the 60s?
Yes.
And that went on anyway. Why do we need to be active? Is because of big corporations and their greed. They see money, and for the SWEPCO thing was stopped because they had some low-level management designers drawing a line through a satellite photo after what? Money. They were after Homeland Security money for redundancy of power lines. It sounds pretty good. We need some redundancy, make sure power gets everywhere, but they did no due diligence. And so that was more or less easily stopped because it was a wrong-headed thing. Now, is this Standing Rock litigation wrong? Hard to say.
Well, let me say this. I think that the Energy Transfer Oil Company that is responsible for trying to construct the Dakota Access Oil Pipeline went to school on Keystone and the Keystone Pipeline. And I think what they did was they learned from that episode or that failed attempt to build an oil line that you need to act quickly, you need to act quietly, and you need to get your supposed permits without giving the public the opportunity to have real input into the process.
Jeremiah, why don't you give us an overview of what this Dakota Access Oil Pipeline controversy is actually about?
Okay. Well, the controversy is that the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, whose reservation lies just south of the 1,172-mile pipeline's charted path across ranches and under the Missouri River, are protesting that an oil leak or spill could ruin what the tribe is calling sacred land. The tribe has been gathering since April outside Cannonball, a town in south-central North Dakota near the South Dakota border, to protest as construction commences. And starting with members of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, the protest has since grown to several hundred people, and most of them from tribes across the country. The pipeline is a $3.7 billion project that would carry almost 500,000 barrels of oil a day from the oil fields of western Dakota to Illinois, where it would be linked with other pipelines. Energy Transfer. The building and owner of the pipeline says the pipeline will pump millions of dollars into local economies and create 8,000 to 12,000 construction jobs, though far fewer permanent jobs to maintain and monitor the pipeline. And members of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe see the pipeline as a major environmental and cultural threat. They say its route traverses ancestral lands which are not part of the reservation where their forebears hunted, fished, and were buried. And they say historical and cultural reviews of the land where the pipeline will be buried were inadequate. And they also worry about catastrophic environmental damage if the pipeline were to break near where it crosses at the Missouri River. Now, I believe the federal judges halted constructions as of Friday of last week, and was that also part of the, what's the phrase whenever you can't go near someone? What's that law?
A restraining order.
Yeah, is that part of that restraining order that just happened recently?
Well, there were restraining orders filed by the oil company against the protesters to try and keep them off the construction site. And they actually brought out security guards and dogs. There's been some close encounters. Some people have been injured. More than a dozen people, between 12 and 20 people, have been arrested. And injunctions have been filed, or actions for injunctions filed by the protesters or the tribes. And as you mentioned, reciprocal restraining orders have been filed by the energy company.
Yeah, and actions have been taken after the first suit was brought against by the tribe, the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, against the Corps of Engineers. The company that's doing it went in and dug up as much as they possibly could. They put 8-foot berms and just trashed right through there, which seems to be something these big corporations do a lot. They ignore any kind of restraining orders, or while the judge was making up his mind, they sent every piece of equipment they could in there and just dug through everything. So, well, it's already messed up. What difference does it make? So they had to file an amended declaration as Tim Mintz Sr. for the tribe. And now there's a slight pause in what's going on. Everybody should write their congressman. The one thing is, nobody disagrees that I don't think we need pipelines running through to get oil moved because of how we've built our society and our culture. But we need to think a little bit more about the long-term situation and keeping, they talked about the tribe calling this land sacred land. Well, all of our land is sacred. If we keep disrespecting our earth, then all of this short-term profit is going to be wasted.
But what's your point? You say two things. We need pipelines.
We do need them.
And we can't put them on our land.
We can't. We need to think about where we put them and how we construct them. These things are done strictly with profit as a motive.
So is this, are you making the not in my backyard argument?
Not really. I don't think so.
Well, I think something that we need to acknowledge. The pipeline structure in this country is absolutely immense. Pipelines are the cheapest method of transporting any type of liquid material. Pipelines run all across this country. They run over and under rivers everywhere. And if you looked at a map of pipelines in this country, you would be amazed at the size and scope of it. A lot of it is getting very old. It's like other portions of our infrastructure. We saw a pipeline break down in Maumelle, Arkansas here a couple of years ago and absolutely devastated a residential neighborhood and polluted Lake Maumelle. So there's a lot of risk involved if you don't maintain your infrastructure. But if we don't utilize pipelines, we're not going to be able to move the amount of liquids across this country that America demands and uses for its energy sources. At the same time, I think there's a right way and a wrong way to go about constructing a new one. And I think that we have laws in place, including the Environmental Protection Act and other legislation for the protection and conservation of historic sites that have to be adhered to and are worthy of engaging in full hearings and full disclosure before projects are approved and undertaken.
I would agree with that. It doesn't happen that way. The behavior of big companies isn't. These are nuisances. These laws are things to be ignored. And
hey, don't leave out the Corps of Engineers.
Will be forgiven. It's easier to be forgiven than it is to get permission.
Yeah, I mean, it's a collusion or a collaboration between industry and government. And I think that the Corps of Engineers and the private industry that was engaged in this particular endeavor ignored the law, ignored the impact, didn't conduct proper hearings, and circumvented the procedures that should have been in place or are in place to do this the right way.
I agree. There's a great word, transparency, in government. Well, transparency, open discussion amongst every party involved can be a wonderful thing. Yeah. Okay, this has to happen. These considerations, okay, we're not gonna dig up your grandfather's grave. We're gonna help preserve this. We're gonna do the best we can to maintain this pipeline underneath this river, and these things can be done if we do them together.
And so what we need to do as a people, I think, is really to figure out whose yard is available.
Well, we do need to find out whose yard's available. Supposedly that ground, which is strange, this idea of we own this ground is just absurd. And the world is our backyard. We need to think about what we're doing to our backyard everywhere. And we haven't done well in our backyard, and we really need to think about it. We need to also listen to the basic tenets of Native American and other cultures of the earth. Respect for Mother Earth is our biggest profit that we can make, and these things that we protest, the SWEPCO line, the hog farm down on the Buffalo River. That farm down there, they were supposedly doing due diligence, but who's doing it? The people that are paid by the hog farm. Those results about what's going on down there and what it's doing to one of the last pristine rivers left on this continent is criminal. We need to be active in our own backyard here in Arkansas about that situation. We did real well as a group of individuals fighting the SWEPCO line because it wasn't thought through. There was the due diligence was a guy with a magic marker and a ruler sitting someplace that had never been to the Ozarks at all. These things are easily rectified without screaming and hating each other, and without people calling them just a bunch of red niggers over there. We don't need to listen to them.
Well, I appreciate your appeal to our better natures. In what now is a relatively long life, I've rarely seen that to work very well on a large scale. But what I am aware of is that the solution, as far as I can tell, really depends on our market economies. When wind and solar achieves scale, when more and more people subscribe to alternatives to fossil fuels. And we see that happening now. Germany, for example, half of German energy is now generated by wind and solar power.
There's actually a small town in Texas that has gone off the grid.
Yes.
It's certainly economically feasible, but again, we have certain financial interests, big coal, gas, oil, that are going to fight this until the last drop of any kind of usable carbon is gone from the earth.
But I think that Dan made a good point before the show began, and I think it's worth reiterating, and that is that we, in fact, have made tremendous progress progress over the last 40 years when it comes to our efforts to protect the environment. We can all remember, or some of us can remember, when pollution was just absolutely horrible. It was the equivalent of what we were seeing in Beijing, China now, in L.A. and Chicago and New York. And we've cleaned a lot of that up, almost all of it. We've done tremendous efforts and had tremendous successes in cleaning up the Chesapeake Bay and other rivers across the country that literally at one time back in the 70s were on fire because of the pollutions. Right. So we've come a long way in our cultural awareness, the awareness that we have in society of the need and necessity for protecting the environment has reached a level that we have never seen, I think, in our history before.
Yeah, and that we need to give ourselves some credit and to draw some hope out of the progress that we have made.
Well, I mean, we need to encourage activists.
Yes, absolutely.
Point these things out when they occur.
Yeah, but we are, as contentious and horrible as the current moment seems, we are a far more civil society than we were when I was a boy. And I recall as a boy that Canadian geese were darn near extinct. And now, my goodness, you just can't get rid of them. And it's all because a little old lady named Rachel Carson wrote a book called Silent Spring. We have made progress.
We have.
Even locally.
Yep.
The Carroll Electric Company calls itself a co-op. Some years ago cleared a great amount of right-of-way, and it's grown back over the years. And that experience some years ago was quite terrible. I had a contractor poking me in the chest with his finger. I was essentially assaulted physically. They're doing it again this year, Carroll Electric is, but they're doing it in-house. They're not contracting it out. The men they have and women they have in the field are courteous. They let you know ahead of time what needs to be done, and of course, we do need to keep our power lines available and maintained. And it's being done in a very good way. Do I like some of what's necessary to keep this technology going? It's not the best thing in the whole world, but they addressed it out front. They talked to me. They made some compromises. I got to give Carroll Electric an attaboy on this thing. And again, it's about talking about it out front. This is what we got to do. How do you want to help? I was able to remove some fences for them so they didn't have to tear things down.
So there's hope.
I think so, yeah. So this cynicism of yours about not being able to come together and talk about things, I think things are so bad, I almost swore there, that it's forcing us to come together again, like the catastrophe of 9/11 gave us the opportunity to come together as a nation. We blew that one. But our political catastrophe that is occurring in front of our eyes is bringing us another opportunity to come together as a nation and do something about it. And I'm very hopeful.
I'm glad you're hopeful. Jeremiah, you just bit off more than you could chew. You opened that Pandora's box, and boy, did you get an earful. So.
I like it when you guys start talking much as you do.
Let's give it up. Thanks, Jeremiah. Up next is T.Racy Johnson, and Music is Medicine for the Soul.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us again here at Ozark Radio Hour. This is T.Racy, and since we all love music so much, I'm going to do something a little different this week. I'm going to talk a lot less so I can play some more music. We have a song from Stevie Tombstone. Stevie is a Eureka/Austin, Texas resident. We have 2 songs from a band called 6 Mile Station. They're out of Reno, Nevada, and hopefully they're going to be touring in our area soon. We have another song from a local Ozark band called the Camp Camptown Ladies. They have a show coming up this October. Check their schedule for that. And we're going to get right to the music. Until next time, don't forget, music is medicine for the soul. Happy trails and safe travels.
I'd still cave in when the phone rings and back in my boots. I ain't lonesome. What am I to do? Driving blind in the sun, and I can't find my way back to you. From West Texas wasteland, the gates of Graceland, I'll sing for $1 or two. While you sit back home with the case of troubadour blues. Lost on some back road, what am I to do? Driving blind in the sun, and I can't find my way back to you. From West Texas wasteland, the gates of Graceland, I'll sing for $1 or two. While you sit back home with the case of the troubadour blues. While you sit back home with the case of the troubadour blues. Texas wasteland, the gates of Graceland, I'll sing for $1 or two. While you sit back home with the case of the troubadour blues. From West Texas wasteland, the gates of Graceland, I'll sing for $1 or two. While you sit back home with the keys of the troubadour blues. While you sit back home with the keys of the troubadour blues. While you sit back home with the keys of the troubadour blues.
Doesn't mean I am not one. Orphaned by the hourglass and now condemned to roam. So send a sign where I belong, and I'll be gone before too long. Surely there must be something more for me to see. long. Surely there must be something more for me to see. Sign where I belong, and I'll be gone before too long. Surely there must be something more for me to see. Please send a sign where I belong, and I'll be gone before too long. Surely there must be something more for me to see. Dreaming of a transatlantic getaway, just a holiday in the sun. Trip my way into a foreign shore, just a little skip across the pond. I've been itching for a change in scenery, sick and tired of staring at the wall. My bag is packed and ready by the door. Gone in an instant once I get the call. Where we go, well, I don't know, but I'll take it as it comes. Right or wrong, oh, I can't say until the whole thing is done. By the way, I think I'll stay and see it through. I ain't got nothing better to do. Nothing better to do. Nothing better to do. Looking for a side that they ain't never seen. Different perspective, a point of view. Oh brother, what I wouldn't give to see this tired world as new. All I'm asking for is a little thrill. I feel the blood pumping in my veins. Someone to shake me wide awake. Oh brother, do you need the same? Where we go, well, I don't know, but I'll take it as it comes. Right or wrong, oh, I can't say until the whole thing is done. Either way, I think I'll stay and see it through. I ain't got nothing better to do. Nothing better to do. Nothing better to do. Got a funny feeling that tonight's the night goes too far, and I don't make it back. No, I don't make it back. No, I don't. No, I don't. No, I don't. Where we go, well, I don't know, but I'll take it as it comes. Right or wrong, I can't say until the whole thing is done. Either way, I think I'll stay and see it through. I ain't got nothing better to do. Where we go, well, I don't know, but I'll take it as it comes. Right or wrong, I can't say until the whole thing is done. Either way, I think I'll stay
matter. I ain't getting lucky tonight. I'm a boxing on backwards, hair stained and a tattered. I ain't getting lucky tonight. Oh, I ain't to shower, I'm dressing myself. I ain't getting lucky tonight. I could spread my sin until it's all spent. I ain't getting lucky tonight. No, I ain't getting lucky tonight. No, I ain't getting lucky tonight. I'm a boxer on backwards, it just doesn't matter. I ain't getting lucky tonight. Some girls like you stinky and a drunk with you drunken, but I ain't a drinking tonight. I'm stone cold sober and I dance like an ogre. I ain't getting lucky tonight. Well, I'm feeling kinda shy and I'm an odd kind of guy. I ain't getting lucky tonight. I'm feeling not boring and I'd rather be snoring. I ain't getting lucky tonight. No, I ain't getting lucky tonight. No, I ain't getting lucky tonight. I'm a boxer on backwards, it just doesn't matter. I ain't getting lucky tonight. I turn my boxers around, go out on the town, but I ain't getting lucky tonight. I ate some leftover beans and it's a show thing. I ain't getting lucky tonight. Oh, I know I am appealing with the shallows appealing. I ain't getting lucky tonight. Gonna kill it to my doggy and sleep like a loggy. I'll be feeling lucky tonight. No, I ain't getting lucky tonight. No, I ain't getting lucky tonight. I'm a boxer on backwards, it just doesn't matter. I ain't getting lucky tonight. Everybody now, I ain't getting lucky tonight. No, I ain't getting lucky tonight. I'm a boxer on backwards, it just doesn't matter. I ain't getting lucky tonight. I'm a boxer on backwards, it just doesn't matter. I ain't getting lucky tonight.
Thank you, Tracy. That was wonderful. Jeremiah, before we go, please tell our listeners there's some changes coming. What's the format and technical changes that are going to happen, and what will they see in the next couple of weeks? What kind of changes?
Well, thanks, Richard. Well, we will be moving the show from the Ozark Radio Hour's website to the website operated by the Eureka Springs Independent. And our contributors, like Sharon Laborde and T.Racy Johnson, will get to have their own shows and won't have to put up with you or Kent.
What?
All right.
What happens to Dan?
Well, he gets to be the guy who gets to, every time I snap my fingers, he will bring me a Dr. Pepper. And we'll never hear from him again, as he will be naught but technical support.
I think I like this.
But he will also continue to produce the Ozark Radio Hour in an alternative format that produces and distributes adult literacy, U.S. citizenship training programs, Spanish language programming, and programs produced by community-based organizations like churches, public libraries, and Rotary, and so on.
So essentially, he's getting rid of us and doing his own show.
Yeah. Yeah, and
what happens to Kent and I?
Okay, well, first we'll be under a new name. We're thinking Ozark News Hour so far, and that's been of course, there's a lot of things that still need to be worked out with both you and Kent, Tracy, and Sharon. But what happens to you and Kent? Well, under my firm but always fair and balanced leadership, the two of you will become famous and revered radio personalities, perhaps even to the scale of the great Lonesome Rhodes.
Whoa. Does that mean we get money?
As I said, you'll become rich and famous.
Rich and famous.
Oh, wait, I mean famous and revered.
And revered. Okay.
Boy, my hopes soared there for a moment.
It didn't take long.
Oh, man. Well, I don't know. It looks like we're on our way out the door, Richard. So, folks, we'll have more news over the next couple of weeks about our transition to the Eureka Independent. In the meantime, I think that's this week's show. Am I right?
You are right.
Well, folks, until next time, thanks for tuning in to the Ozark Radio Hour, and maybe for the last time, adios.
The Ozark Harvest Radio Hour is a production of the Eureka Springs Independent and the Inside Straight and Thanatopsis Club. Richard Pillay, executive producer. Dan Croats, producer and writer. Dr. Sharon Sloan, technical director. Dr. Fred Mayer, Director of Music, G.K. Chesterton, Director of Philosophy and Content, Jane Pillay and Bonifaci Fiacre, Gardening Consultants, Luca Brazzi, Aquaculture Consultant, Eddie Keever and the Fabulous Keever Sisters, Advertising and Sales. The Ozark Harvest Radio Hour is organic radio, always fresh, always local, and always honest. We are community radio. That means that if you would like to appear on the Ozark Harvest Radio Hour, we have to put you on. Contact us at the OzarkHarvestRadioHour.com, like us on Facebook, or look us up in the telephone book. Until next week, so long, and be nice.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.